screen? Yes, you can. And in this slot, we are going to present you the interaction with the IoTRegistry module. Okay, we've thought of splitting this into two main parts. On the first hand, we are sharing with you some outlines of how to deal with it and provide you the material in a PowerPoint basis. And then afterwards, we have prepared a Postman live demonstration, and whose collection we have in mind to share with you. Mainly, yes, at the very first moment I start with it, I'll copy the link and paste it in the chat so that all of you can play around with it. Okay, so let's go. So as I said before, the IoTRegistry is this big white component which is actually the cornerstone of the FIESTA IoT platform. It is in charge of storing all the semantic information, whether it is the resource descriptions that testbed providers have to register at the very first time they federate their stuff and want to become part of FIESTA, and afterwards, when every time they generate measurements from their sensors or whatever, they have to inject it to FIESTA in order to allow us to save all the information. One of the things that is worth highlighting regarding this FIESTA resources and all the stuff coming from the bottom side. That's it. That for you guys, for experimenters, you won't be able to distinguish which is the actual source of the testbed that provides the measurements of the resource description. This is one of the main objectives that pursued by the project, which is fancily named testbed agnostic access. Okay. As well, since we are using semantic data, we do want to achieve this testbed and this Web of Things paradigm. So all the information is connected in a single graph, as the one that Rachid showed you before, even though there were two main domains, one for resources and one for observations. We've seen that there is a binding between these two. Afterwards, I'll show you and stress this to you. And in order to access to this IoTRegistry module, we have provided you with a public API through which you can directly interact with. So these arrows from this right side. So what Rachid presented you this morning was located in this area of the screen. We offered you a kind of extra way to access the information by means of the. Oh, sorry, I heard someone unmuted. Okay, so as I said before, as I just said, we offer a kind of backdoor to directly extract data from the IoTRegistry module through a REST API, which is the one that I'm going to explain you in the next slides. Another thing that is worth highlighting is that there are two ways of gathering observation from the testbed. The legacy one and the default one is through the execution of a SparkQL query to the IoTRegistry, which will search into the semantic triple store, and then you'll get back the observations that you want. Another option is through the IoT service endpoint provided by testbeds. It's a kind of optional parameter that could be directly invoked by you, having into account this testbed agnostic access, which will go directly to the testbeds, retrieve the measurement, and then you'll get back the measurement. I'll show you when I explain the in-house experiment that we are carrying out in the University of Cantabria. Okay, so this is the resources that you will be able to interact with regarding the IoTRegistry API. This is the base path that you will be able to use, and these are the four main realms that you will use. One focusing on resources, observations, endpoints, the optional parameter that I just mentioned, and another one important for the execution, storage of SparkQL queries. You will come back to it later. As a kind of reminder, I'll paste you again the ontology, which it's split into two main parts, as I said before. This upper one focuses on the resources, and this on the bottom is the part that has to do with the observations. This is important because observations and resources are linked through these properties. Okay, you don't have to know it now, but as soon as you deal with SPARQL queries, it's important to take this into account. Okay, without spending more minutes, these are a brief explanation of the four main resources that you'll be able to play around with: resources, observations, endpoints. This is, as I have to stress again, that is an optional parameter of the resources, so meaning that testbed providers might not include this into the resource description, so that if you include this in the SPARQL query, you might have an empty resource set. So, for instance, our resources do have them, and what we're presenting there is the glass values measured by the sensors. And another important thing, if you invoke these IoT service endpoints, you'll get the original information coming from the testbed annotator, not the hidden one from Fiesta. This is important to take into account, but as I said before, we will cover all this stuff in can take your time after the workshop and play around with the Postman collection, and I think it's more sensible rather than going one by one now. And this is a brief resume of a brief summary of all the material that we have. We have created a dummy account just for experimenting. This is the one that we are using in the Postman collection that I'm going to go just right now. And the Postman collection, as soon as the link is definitive, I'll hand you the link. And important, the IoTRegistry API documentation. I strongly recommend you to go through this, check that everything is fine, and ask us whether you have any issue on that. And having said this, I think it's time to go to Postman. I hope many of you, or most of you indeed, are familiar with Postman, and what you are trying to do is to start from the very beginning and cover all the options and services that you can make use of. Okay, so the part that Paul, oh sorry, before I forget, let me share with you the link to the collection, so that if you want to interact with it while I'm presenting, better. Okay, so first step, if you wanted to get access to a protected component as the IoT registry, you have to retrieve your single sign-on token. You have to do. I'm using an environment. I don't know whether you're familiar or not, but in the end, what we have behind the scenes is this. We have the dummy account that I just told you, the endpoint, and the token, which is retrieved after calling this service. This is, if everything is fine, you will receive the token, and that will be used in all the calls that will be shown in the next steps. Okay, first step, resources. With this, we are going to retrieve all the individuals registered at the IoT registry. But this is by testbed providers. Okay, this is not very useful in the end, but what you see is all the information that we have registered. As we can see, we have these Fiesta identifiers instead of the legacy testbeds. So that for you, all of them, Fiesta is a kind of black box that hides all the information below this. Okay. Apart from this row service, we can filter. You have the URI parameter in the collection, but for instance, let's retrieve all the testbeds that has been registered so far in the platform. Through this filtering by the class, what we are retrieving is the different testbeds that are registered. We can see again as they are hidden to us, to our eyes. Next step, observations. We've registered a number of them, not too many, but to show you, we have some observation registered with real data captured from the sensors. When Flavio and myself present the experiments, you will be able to see them in the map. I think it's more practical rather than navigating through them like this. Likewise, the previous example, we can filter from using the classes in the ontology, so that we can retrieve, for instance, the SSN sensor output individuals that have been registered in the platform so far. Okay. Hello, Diego, have you unmuted for any reason, or can I continue? Okay.
Sorry, okay. I haven't said anything.
Okay, no, I just heard you. You just unmuted for 1 second, and I thought you were going to ask something. Okay, can I continue? Okay, then anyway you can interrupt me whenever you want. Okay, regarding the endpoints, as I said a couple of times before, an optional parameter of the IoT resource registration is including including an endpoint for every resource registered. In Smart Santander, we have registered an endpoint for each sensor that we have in the platform, so that by calling this endpoint, you will be able to retrieve the last value and not registered by or measured by these sensors. If we run the service, taking into account that our favorite RDF for serialization format is JSON-LD, you'll get the original observation captured by, in this case, sensor 72. You can see, as I stressed before, this is the actual testbed identifiers and not the FIESTA unique ones. Okay, and the most important thing of this presentation is the way to extract data from the IoTRegistry module. Let me close this one. We have two options. Through this queries execute global, we can include in the body the SparkQL query per se. For instance, in this case, we are going to retrieve all the sensors that have to do with environmental data. You can play around this, just clicking it and seeing the results. So, for instance, we can see air temperature sensors, their IDs, the IoT service endpoints, so that if you click on this, you will see the observation as we saw before. As you can see, most of them are air temperature sensors, but there are also sound ones, illuminants. Well, it's worthless to waste some time here. Okay, this is on the resource domain, but we have the other one. We might want to retrieve information about the observations. What we are doing here is to retrieve the information about the last measurements of every node. In this case, what we are capturing is the value, the unit of measurement, the physical phenomenon, who made the observation, and the timestamp. So in this case, we have only registered 4 observations, but the more we have, the more the larger the array of this, the larger the array. Okay, so I've left some examples of retrieving the last observation of a particular sensor, so maybe you can play around with it. And another important thing that we have designed it to help you all, we have provided a kind of a store or catalog of predefined SparkQL queries. Okay, you can access through this path. In this case, the store is empty, but in the next steps we are going to register some template queries, and you'll see how easy it is to interact with them. First query to register. You have all this stuff you have here and in the IoT API documentation, in the handbook, and in the Moodle. So I don't want to stop too long on this JSON object. What we are registering now is a SPARQL query, which is escaped like this. This is the original query. We have to point the scope that we are trying to attack. Let's say the scopes are resources, observations, and a kind of a mixture between both of them, which is called global, through which you can access in the very same SPARQL query both worlds. And for the sake of helping other users understand what are the queries, a brief description. Okay, if we register the query, we have this created if everything is fine, and if we go back to the store, we see the query number 16 is the one that we've just registered. Okay, in case we want to run this query just to retrieve these environmental values, what we have to do is to properly point the ID and click this execution. So after a while, you will retrieve all the environmental values, as we did in the raw SPARQL query that we made manually here. Okay, so the last important thing that we would like to highlight you is, apart from these raw queries that like the one we have registered here, we can do a kind of templating for the queries. Let me explain. In this case, we are going to retrieve the individuals that match with a particular class that might be manually introduced by you. Okay, so through the introduction of these 3% symbols, the name of the variable, and closing by the same 3 symbols, you will be able, upon at execution time, to dynamically refer to this variable. Let's see with an example. First, we are going to register the query number 17. We're going to check that everything is fine. Number 17, and we can see here these bars. We have a variable to play with. Okay, so in case we want to run this query number 17, we have the variable here, and then what we are going to retrieve is all the sensing devices nodes that have been registered in the IoT registry. If we click send, we are going to receive all the matches of this dynamically selected SPARQL query. Another example of this is, for instance, you want to retrieve all the subset of sensors that are within a particular area. So what we have prepared here is a kind of a generic SPARQL query to retrieve all sensors that are within a rectangle covering 4 main parameters: the latitude and longitude of the northwest corner, and the same with the southeast one. So if we register the query, we see the 4 variables here, so that in case you want to use this and without the need of manually posting and executing the query by yourself, you have it here for good, and then you can come and get it whenever you want. So in case, just to finalize, as an example, what we are doing here is, I don't remember, it's 18. What we are doing here is to retrieve all sensors that are inside Spain. This is the approximate coordinates that limit the Spanish country, so that when we click and run it, what we are doing is to retrieve only all the resources that are within this area. It goes without saying that seeing this just here is kind of boring, but if you plan to do this in your experiments, it will be really easy and straightforward to adapt it. Okay, so having said this, the default way to define your experiments is through the tools that Rachid has explained you before. But if you want, you have this plan B available so that you can directly extract data through the IoTRegistry API. Okay, and in these 25 minutes, I think we've gone through all the features that we are providing so far. So if you have any question or issue, please raise your hand, unmute yourselves, and speak now.
Yes, hi, Diego from Ameritas. Yes, well, thank you very much, David. That was very good. I mean, I have a small question, very small, really. I just noticed on this diagram that you have the Firefox icon on several elements. Why is this? Is this because we are bound to? I mean, why is this?
No, it's I put just Firefox because it's a well-known browser, but this means it's in the habit. This means that all the Firefox, the components with Firefox icon are within the web portal that has been presented before.
Okay, that's clear now. Okay, right.
Sorry, she just told me that putting Firefox was kind of risky, but I didn't follow his advice.
Okay, yeah, that's clear now. Thanks.
Okay, so from your side, you will interact. You will be this part of the architecture. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because this bottom part of the architecture focus on the testbed provider, so it's out of your scope, guys.